Welcome to the WeddingPros podcast. I'm here with Jared today. We're going to be talking about how to not tank your business in 2021 after all this COVID-19 stuff hopefully goes away. But before we do that, I just want to encourage you, subscribe, hit the alert bell if you're watching on YouTube, or we're on a lot of different podcast platforms, so definitely check us out there. If you're watching on YouTube and you're on the road, we want you to check us out, give us a review, and give us 5 stars. That will be amazing. Thank you very much. So, Jared, this has been just a really great year so far, right?
Yeah, it's awesome in every way, shape, and form. It's awesome. Yeah, I think, the hardest part of this year hasn't even really been the situations that I think everyone's been going through. It's more like the uncertainty, right? Where it's like, yeah, I would have a great plan if I knew what was actually going on, and it's just so hard to make any kind of changes or really know how to approach your business when you don't even know if you're going to be shooting and, is the coronavirus going to come back? Is it going to have the second wave? Is it going to go away completely? I read an article this morning that some scientists were like, oh, the coronavirus is going to go away by itself. We don't even need a vaccine. So it's like no one really knows what's going on. So how the heck do you plan for your business when you don't have a clue and you're not a scientist?
Yeah, well, and scientists don't even know.
Yeah.
For us, I know we run a wedding film and photo business called Stop Go Love. We also run Huxley Film, and we have another side brand we're working on. And in some ways, this has been perfect timing for our business. In other ways, it's been terrible timing. We last year committed to starting this high-end brand, and we got a bunch of bookings for it this year. Every one of them has been wiped out. So, creating new content, growing that brand, it's going to be very challenging. Stop Go Love, I feel like that's always our bread and butter. We're doing 120 weddings there, and, I feel like that's going to be pretty consistent. But one of the cool things that's come out of this is and I think a lot of us are looking and saying, how do we stay alive? How do we stay afloat? And a lot of it's going to come down to who can be the most creative with their packages and with their offerings and with their marketing and things like that. And so we've actually created a product, and we started downselling people, which I know is not everyone's favorite cup of tea, because I know most people are looking. But we looked at some challenges next year. And so we're looking ahead to 2021, and that's what we're going to be talking about all today in the podcast, is looking at 2021 and trying to do your very best to stay alive, and also, make sure you make a little bit of money. Actually, don't tank your business. And one of the things that I'm noticing too is not only are we there's that revenue loss. For us with teams, it's that training loss in 2020, right? It's that lack of new referrals coming out of 2020.
Yep.
Who knows how booking's going to go next year when we shot no weddings to get referred from.
Yep.
No, luckily we have a strong referral base from all 10 years of doing this, but that's challenging. It's you're not getting any new referrals for 2020, barely. And so, but we decided, well, okay, we got this other idea, and we think it'll serve people this year, and it'll serve people next year. So when people call us, and the economy, I think, it's not going up, it's going down. So we said, well, how do we not lose money? How do we keep our margins, allow some training, create a product that has some other potential? And so we've actually been downselling people to this other plan. So Jared, how has that gone? Just booking clients this year, and it's been kind of all over the place, right?
Yeah. I think a couple observations I've noticed, not just for us, but also just people across the board, is rescheduling, right? I found a majority of ours, I don't think we've had one cancellation, actually, at this point. I had one client that we essentially fired because I was just like, no, this isn't going to work. I don't want to work with you. But besides that, and, sometimes that's just going to happen in this scenario. I don't have any regrets in that situation. But everyone else is rescheduled. We rescheduled probably close to 70 weddings at this point, 65, somewhere around there.
Who knows?
Rescheduled for later this year and next year. And I'm noticing in other parts of the countries, weddings are opening up. So probably less of this year is lost for more southern states. although the virus seems to be rising in those states and declining in the northern states. So
Great job, South.
I know. Here we are. In Rhode Island, they just announced the other day that we can have 75 people indoor and 150 people outdoor starting in July. So that's a big step for us. So weddings are changing.
A lot of our weddings are in Rhode Island.
Yep. So
and Connecticut's opened up.
Lots of postponements. Also, lots of the people that are currently going to get married. Lots of changes to their day. And a lot of people have, there's a million questions right now. But essentially, we have some people reaching out now, asking if they can actually change their package. And for us,
Explain that. What are they asking to change?
Some people are going to want less services, which to me, I'm like, I can't do that. Essentially, you committed to a certain thing and the amount of guests at your wedding doesn't really affect me. But maybe what I'm willing to do instead is, hey, still pay the same amount of money, but maybe I could throw in drone as opposed to, a second shooter or these linear edits or whatever. I'm flexible, but I mean, still, I'm encouraging people without putting up much of a fight, encouraging people to still get, have the same value of the package, but maybe they can switch around what they actually get. And actually, being a salesperson, if you're in this industry, you're a salesperson, right? Hopefully. So sell them on story. Like there's certain people, like if you can only have 150 people at an outdoor wedding, and you were planning on having a 250 person wedding, you can't plate 250, plates anymore if you're a catering company. But for us, the amount of people doesn't really affect me. The amount of time, maybe how the day goes, kind of really does affect me. But if I have more time, I can be like, hey, what if we went down to that cool beach? Now that we have more time, what if we went down and we made your video even better through things that we, maybe
I think that's a really good point
before. Yeah.
Because what you're doing is, you're keeping your money. And I think that's important. And my recommendation to anybody is like, do not let someone reduce the cost, like the price of your package because you can't afford it most likely. That's just my recommendation. Obviously you do you, but I do think selling them on more value or offering them things and being flexible in that, like normally we all know that we sell a bunch of stuff that doesn't really cost us much, which it's great. That's where the profit is as your business. I recommend that. If you can upsell drone and it costs you basically nothing to do, but you're making $400 profit off of it, great. But in this case, we're trying to keep a customer happy, right? And so my take on a lot of this stuff was like, oh, these people, it's not their fault that this thing happened to them. And it's like, yeah, that's true. So I'm not going to give them their money back, but I am going to go the extra mile to make sure they have a good experience. So I think you have an opportunity in a lot of ways by offering value that doesn't have cost. So I'll say that again, like there's really no cost to your raw footage.
Yeah.
There's really no cost really to a multicam sync of like a whole ceremony. It's very minimal cost. There's really not much cost to your drone. You already own it.
Yeah.
Like whatever you're selling as an upsell, if people are like upset and they're like, well, I'm getting less now. So I think that's a really good strategy, Jared, of just offering them value and making them feel like, because what we keep seeing, every email I see from client is pretty much either the normal, I want this package, or I'm going to look somewhere else. But the new email I'm seeing is, thank you so much for being flexible. Thank you so much for being flexible.
And, a lot of things that we do don't really have costs, like you mentioned. The raw footage doesn't cost you anything, really. It's just
not like you cannot have raw footage.
Here's a link to your footage. It's usually a $500 value, $1,000 value, whatever. I'm going to give it to you for free or as a part of your package. But
just to keep you from shredding me online that I was a jerk about coronavirus.
There's a couple other couples that I've kind of dealt with that I have allowed them to pay less, but the package is much more profitable. So like kind of what you're saying, like I'm going to do less work, but it's a lot less work, and I'm still going to charge them probably 75% of.
You're not going to eat into your margins.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna charge them 75% of what they were going to pay. They were going to pay $5,000. Now they're going to pay $3,500, but I'm doing 50% of the work.
Yes.
So it's like just a more
hiring
profitable.
less people.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
this is why you got to know your numbers. And this is like, I always feel like we have an unfair advantage as we run our business. Not unfair advantage. It's very fair. We've done the work. You can do the work too. But like, we know our numbers, we know our cost, and we know our margins. And so we know what we can afford to give away. And if you're in this time right now and you don't know your cost and you don't know your margins and you don't know anything about your actual business except for what you make, you are not going to know how to keep your profits up because you're not going to know where your cost is.
Yep.
And so we don't give away profit, but we do. What we give away is oftentimes things that doesn't cost us anything, but it always helps the client still.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key.
Perceived value, right?
Yes. And actual value.
And actual value where normally you would probably charge a lot, on your really profitable items, but now you might just throw it in because it doesn't cost you anything. But,
yeah. So that's the thing. You've been flexible with these packages. And then the other thing is we've been selling this newer package that's much lower. When did we start selling that? About 2 months ago?
Yeah. Well, we started working on it in January, even before coronavirus hit, because we were like, what would it be like servicing? Like we talk about it on the podcast, and if you haven't listened to that podcast about the current state of the wedding industry, we talk a lot about, how if you're charging $3,000 or $4,000, I think it was $3,000.
35 or something. Anyway, three. Yeah, you're right.
That's only
$3,000
$3,000 and above is only 4% of the market
for wedding films. I think it's 8% photographers.
Yeah, it's a higher amount for photographers, but $3,000 and above, is a small sliver of the amount of people getting married.
Potential customers.
So we're like, can we have a product that's still good that I don't feel like I'm just, becoming George Street or, one of those just huge companies
that everyone complains about.
Everyone complains about the quality. And I still feel proud to service these people and give them something good for a lesser product, for a lesser cost, or a more approachable cost, I guess.
Well, it's just we hate turning money down. And maybe that's a fault of ours. But like if somebody calls us and they're like, "Oh, I love you and I would give you money, but I can't afford you," we're always wondering, could I find a way to make the same profit off this person, give them less, like me do less work at a cheaper cost, they're happy, I'm making money, and it's a win-win for everyone? Is that possible?
Yep.
So anyway, we're working on that now.
And we see it as like a ladder, right? It's like if somebody immediately, if you're running your own business, you get people all the time, they ghost you, right? There's somebody who's not gonna respond to any email, and we're in Honeybook, so I see message read 15 minutes afterwards and no response. I'm like, we're too expensive for this person. Because as soon as you send them the packages, the prices, they disappear, they ghost you. It has to do with cost. So
sometimes they'll tell you, most times they won't.
Most time they won't, because it's embarrassing when you're like, oh, I can't afford that. No one ever wants to say, I can't afford that.
No.
It's embarrassing to them. Everyone wants to pretend like they're wealthy.
Or they just thought they were, and suddenly they realize they're not.
Yeah. Or they're just like, maybe I could just, hire someone for $1,000 less and be just as happy. So our idea is, hey, let's create a ladder for ourselves so that we're reaching out to them again. If they haven't responded to us within 3 days, they get an email saying, hey, also, we have this sister company that, we've been working on. Here's the information on it. Here's the pricing. It's a little bit different than a Stop Go Love film, but we'd love to catch up with you. I've had so much success doing that.
We've probably sold in 1 month.
It's probably 5 weddings.
5 of them.
5 weddings. Yep.
And we've only downsold it.
Yep.
We have not even launched the brand.
Yep.
So we've only sold that by having people call us and say, I want this.
Yep.
Like it's your normal package of our Stop Go Love. And we say, well, they'll say, oh, I can't afford it. And then we reach out to them and say, hey, would you be interested in our sister company? But that's the only way we've sold it is captive leads.
I've had another couple too that I'm just learning from this right now. So this is fresh. These are fresh takes. But I've actually had one couple who didn't respond initially. We sent them the follow-up email about our new company, the lower end company, or I wouldn't say lower end, but lower cost
We're calling
company.
It accessible, more
Yeah,
accessible.
more accessible. And
actually, before it's not just more accessible; it's a totally different style.
Yes. Yeah, it's a very different product. But I've reached
and we
out
think
to
it's
them.
cool. We don't just think it's like cheap.
Yeah.
We're happy with it.
Yeah, I reached out to them about that product, and then started the conversation. They were like, "Yeah, you know what? Probably Stop Go Love would be more in our wheelhouse of what we would want." And I'm like, "Great, here are our packages." So it's just engaging people. And once she actually got on the phone with me and was like, "Well, I really like Jared a lot. We want to go with Stop Go Love." It's engaging them in general and just starting the conversation. So we've actually seen people, start with Stop Go Love, go down the ladder, see if it was possible, reach out to us, and then they're like, "No, Stop Go Love makes more sense," and we book them for Stop Go Love.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting, I think with both products, like you said, we want them to both be quality, but we just are, experimenting with this kind of lower tier product.
Well, and I think in the middle of this situation for 2021, we're going to focus on that, but we just wanted to give a little insight into how we're navigating this right now, because this is our thinking, right? Our thinking is we don't know what's going to happen. So on some level, you have to take what you can get, and you need to really focus on getting because every one of us are going to lose tons of revenue in 2020. Like, no matter what you think, or 2021 or both.
Yeah. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where a lot of people are. A lot of people right now, I don't think people are really feeling much pain.
Most people, probably not.
People, like we've had a lot of stress, but I don't think it's been real pain yet for a majority of wedding creatives out there.
Because of PPP, because of retainers, all that stuff.
Because of unemployment insurance. If you're sole op, you're getting the what is it, the disaster
I don't know, some
relief. Yeah, there's a million different things, but for a lot of these things, they end at the end of July. The PPP got extended, so you can extend it a little bit longer. But yeah, so there's a bunch of kind of fail safes right now. The wedding industry is going to be one of the very last things to fully recover from this virus.
There's a great book I would encourage called 4DX is what I always call it, but 4 Disciplines of Execution, and it talks about lagging measures, right? It says like leading measures are like how many people are calling me, right? And so if your leads are going down, the lagging measure is going to be bookings. And next year, there's going to be a big lag on earnings. And like, unfortunately for us in our industry, like, we don't feel the pain until next year. A lot of other industries, they feel the pain now. Restaurants, they're all closing now. We're at the end of the tidal wave. We're on the shoreline, right? And so after it wipes out restaurants and bars, it's coming for us.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. And so we're going to talk about today is what are some things you can do to keep yourself from being crushed by that tidal wave of like decreased demand, decreased average spend. These are things that can very well happen. And the biggest thing for us as wedding professionals is going to be decreased availability and supply on our side. We can't make as much money because we have other obligations, and increased cost. So you are going to be dealing with two factors outside of your control, which is, the economy and booking like these venues even and all this stuff. But the stuff you can control, I think, is your availability and your cost. And so how do you keep from getting crushed, and what are some things that you can do to stay alive for 2021?
Yeah. So let's walk this out and talk about, I think what a lot of wedding professionals are currently going through. You have your whole 2020 wedding season booked, essentially before March, before everything shut down. You probably have at least 75% of your wedding season booked at that point. So you have a first deposit, maybe it's 30%, maybe it's 50%, whatever it is. You have a bulk of money that was in the bank that, maybe you're living off of, which we talked to Mike about and the author of Profit First couple podcasts ago. He does not like
living off retainers. Definitely check that episode out, by the way. It's very poignant and relevant to this subject.
Yep. And so you have this bulk of money. Maybe you're living off of it. Maybe you're saving it and you're going to put it towards your summer when putting your retainers aside so that you're going to be living off it later. Whatever. You have this bulk of money. Then coronavirus hits, and you're not booking anymore for months. Maybe now we're starting to book a little bit more for later in the season because things are opening up. People are feeling more confident. So you might be able to do, let's just say, half your wedding season this year. Maybe a majority of people countrywide, you're able to do half of your wedding season. So you'll be able to deliver, a full wedding. Maybe it's different, but you're able to deliver half your wedding season this year. The first half is either been pushed off till later in the season. So maybe you have a little bit of a bottleneck at the end of the year. You might be shooting 3 weddings on a weekend, 2 weddings on a weekend, maybe at the end of this year. I think for a majority of us, though, everyone's postponed until 2021. Yeah, that's how it's been for us.
Yeah, most of our weddings are pretty. I think I'll be surprised if we shoot 30 weddings this year, which for us is a very small amount. I know for some people they don't even do 30, and that's just their choice. But that for us, we do a lot, and like we're gonna do a quarter of what we would normally do.
Yep. So and so next year we already have days where we're shooting 4 weddings in a day, single day, and that's kind of where we max out anyways. We'll do 4 weddings in a day. We have the team for that, staff that's been with us for 4, 5, 6 years. So everyone's been there. It's what we're used to. Now we have to start thinking about booking for 2021 new clients, right? So
because that's where the revenue is.
So I think what we've done, and I think what's really important for people to do first and foremost is realize where their opportunities, how many opportunities to shoot they have for 2021. How much can you make last year? Best case scenario, if you're to shoot Friday, Saturday, Sunday, every single weekend, I think the first step is realize that you might have to shoot 3 days in a row, right? Or work 3 days in a row, which is maybe in 2020 would have been unheard of. I never want to shoot 3 weddings in a row, but next year I might have to. Our team might have to. It's just what we might have to do. It's just a normal, that's our new norm. It's going to be in 2021, maybe shooting, double headers or triple headers just on a regular basis. We're just going to have to plan for it. But how many Saturdays do you have left next year?
Yeah.
If you're a sole operator, how many Saturdays do you really have?
So
how much money can you make?
We would call that just, you need to take an inventory of what you have, right? You need to take an inventory of your demand, and this is ongoing, right? You're going to have to keep tracking this because this is the type of thing where, you should be doing it anyway. Like we base our business off demand more than we do off supply.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, demand is a leading measure of how much you can sell. And we sell at a very high clip. We're like 22% of our close rate on how many leads we get and how many we sell. Normal is 10%. So we do a good job with that. Demand is a big deal to us. So you need to keep tracking your demand because I have no idea how it's going to get affected by this. And that lets you know what your opportunities are. If your demand doesn't go up at all, you might have some issues. But what you're talking about is you need to make an inventory of your supply.
Yes.
And that means looking at your Saturdays and saying, this Saturday, and so this is what I recommend. Go through every Saturday that you have, or not just Saturdays, but whatever you consider as your prime dates, and identify which ones are already wiped out from rescheduling.
How much money you're making off of those.
How much money you're going to make, like
off your second deposit or third deposit or
what's
whatever.
What's left? What's the remainder on that balance, and when is it coming in? And then figure out, is that going to be good enough? Like I can't imagine it will be for most people. And I honestly think you have to take a real hard look at, like, what is my goal next year? Which is, do I want to keep the same amount of revenue, like, as normal, right? And do I want to shoot the same amount of normal weddings I would normally shoot, plus these weddings? My recommendation, this is just me as a pure business person. I don't care about your work-life balance. I don't care about your emotional health, any of that stuff. In this advice, I would say you need momentum as a business. You cannot just you can't just say, oh, I have 15 reschedules next year. I'm going to it's okay. I don't need money. My husband makes a lot of money. So I'm only going to do 5 more weddings on top of that. And not realize that you're literally cutting your referral base by 75%. And that is going to affect 2022 in a major way.
Yep.
And so you need to, my advice would be, do your best to shoot the amount of new weddings that you normally would shoot plus your reschedules.
Yeah.
If you can without hiring more staff, without getting more editors, without adding cost. If you can do that, you can pretty much right the ship in one season.
Yeah. So I think for a lot of people, that question for them is probably, how are they able to do that? Like if you've only been able to do 15 weddings, shooting and editing, just maybe you have a Monday through Friday job. Are you able to take an extra 15 weddings? Are you physically just able to do it? If not, how could you do it? And maybe that means hiring someone. We can talk about that. We're going to talk about that a little bit later because it's something that we do. It's a big part of our business model. But yeah, I think
you just have to be open is what I'm saying.
Sure.
Like, you can't have a rigid mindset. You can't just be thinking like about whatever used to be your mindset about weddings needs to go.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you need to change. And it's really about how long do you want this to hurt you?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want it to just hurt you for this year and next year, or do you want it to hurt you for many years to come?
Yep.
Because not taking new work is that's what terrifies me the most.
Yep.
Is like, I want my 120 weddings, not because of the money, but because it increases my referral base every year.
Yep.
Every year I'm working with new families and new planners and new venues. And the less I get to do, the less opportunities I get to see those people, the less opportunities they decide they like me, and the less they tell their friends to call me. Mm-hmm. And that is a huge lagging thing. That might take 2-3 years for that seed to germinate.
Yep.
Because that person doesn't know anyone who's getting married. And then suddenly their friend gets engaged and you didn't do any of those weddings. And so you have way less opportunities. So like, let's talk about 4 things I think everyone can do you have to make a decision to go, I think, one of these directions for 2021 to keep yourself from tanking your business. One of them I think actually might tank your business, but you can still make the choice. And the other 3, I think you can actually maintain a positive trajectory. So the first one I think is you can just decide you don't care. And that's not your number one priority. And this is, by the way, a perfectly fine thing. And if you feel like you're like, I'm just not going to do this to myself or my family, I don't have a negative opinion of that. Just know that you're making a decision to possibly hurt your business. And I'm fine with that. Life isn't all about money. But you can go get another job. You can just work whatever comes in, not increase your capacity, not get more staff, and just, that by the end of the year, you see where you are. And that's what I think a lot of people are going to do. They're just going to get a side job, deal with it. Who knows? Maybe they never shoot weddings again after 2021.
Yeah.
But
a majority of people out there shooting are part-time.
Yes.
So, I think that's a perfectly reasonable expectation. I think
it's a good option.
Yep.
It's the real option for a lot of people, and just know that is a choice you can make. You don't have to do these other 3 things. These other 3 things that we're going to mention are going to be super hard. Mm-hmm. And they're going to, I'm going to just want to prepare people. Like, next year is going to suck. Like, in a lot of ways. For wedding professionals, this year kind of sucks, but I've heard some people be like, oh, it's great because I'm redefining myself, or I'm, like, taking the summer off. I haven't had one. And it's like, okay, that's awesome. But, like,
you're going to have an opportunity to prove it next year.
Yeah. It's going to hit hard in a lot of ways. And like, you can make a decision that like, I don't care. And that's the first option is like, this doesn't define me. It's not my priority. I'm cool with it. Moving on. Or, I'll just see where the chips fall at the end of the year. I'm not going to compensate for the lack of opportunities, the lack of, supply that I have. I'm not going to try to increase it. I'm not going to keep the same revenue next year, because that's what we're really talking about, is like keeping your business revenue the same or better, continuing to grow next year, not losing money next year. For some of you might be fine with that. Mm-hmm. And I think you get another job, you recoup the revenue through your other job, and whatever you do with your weddings, you do. So the second option, and I think this is going to be, for some people, this will be great because it might actually get you into a new market, which is to look at your lack of supply, because this is how the market works, right? The supply and demand, right? You have less supply, so you charge more for your remaining supply. If you have 10 weddings rescheduled next year, you want to book 10 more, you just raise your prices on those remaining 10. You be really choosy, and you try to recoup some of your losses that way. And the good thing about that one, right, is that it establishes a new market value for you.
Yeah, I was going to say demand. There's a couple different people that I think, have to make different choices depending on where you are with your business. Like we just talked about the person who might be part-time and they maybe shoot 10 weddings a year. They might want to get another job. I would say to that person, next year might be a really great opportunity for you, because if there's increased demand and you've been having a hard time, getting to 15 to 20 to 30 weddings to really push yourself to that full-time position, it might be a great opportunity for you because the demand is going to be so high and supply is going to be much lower. And the people who are full-time, like us, we're going to be charging more for our packages next year. We're going to be raising our rates because the demand is so much higher and our cost is going to be higher as well. We have to charge more.
And I'm just going to point out to everyone, if you don't understand why you charge more next year and you think you're being cruel to people, you don't understand economics. Like, you have to charge more when the demand is higher. And one of them is because of making money. You can make money, and that's the point of running your business. You're not doing favors for anyone. No one has to have a wedding film. No one has to have wedding photography. That's a choice they make.
And also, I think less people will feel that way because you're not inflicting it on an individual couple. You're more just like, here are my prices. Sure. This is market. So you shouldn't feel that way.
No,
you should not feel
it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and it's like regressive, and it hurts other people's businesses when like you're bullying people. And the other reason is like, actually you have to control demand. A lot of us are like, your supply is very limited, and you have to have some way of controlling that demand and qualifying couples to fill those remaining times. And so, like I was saying, the second way is you raise your prices. You raise because you want to control the demand.
I'm also like, I'm not an economics major, professional, anything like that.
Really?
Yeah, believe it or not. But I mean, something to be concerned about, I think, just reading about it, is inflation too. Like, we've been given so much money this year. Like, our business has been given a lot of money. Individuals have been given a lot of unemployment. Inflation is a real thing. Like, what? So I know, and this is something that I have never even heard people talk about in the wedding industry, but it's gonna happen. Like, the cost of everything is going to go up. The cost
have you seen how much it costs to buy a ground hamburger?
Yeah. The cost of food, all these costs are going up. So what that means is your cost of doing wedding films has to go up too. So like that, that might be something that's actually affected like 3-4 years away, but you may as well start now, like, because everything is just going to
and it just makes sense. It just makes sense. It's a good time. And for some of you, it's going to be a big win next year. Is like, you're going to finally break a price point that you've never been able to break. And you're going to feel justified. And some of you just haven't done it because you didn't have the confidence. And I'm telling you, it's a really good time to look at it. You can either have like a progressive model where your prices go up after each booking, or you can just decide, this is what I'm worth, and charge it, like whatever it is. But that might be, some of you guys, the second way you're going to keep from tanking in 2021 is you're going to raise your prices. And people, I think, will actually understand it, and I think for some of you, it's gonna be a really, really good thing. And so I'm looking. That's a positive.
So to overview, like I the way I see it is, there's two different people out there who are going to benefit from this. It's the person who is actually doing the raising of the prices. Maybe they're a more established person who's like, hey, I just have to charge more. I'm gonna build up my prices over time,
good
or whatever.
Demand.
And then the other person who's benefiting from having lower prices, who is more like a part-time person who is like, hey, I do good work, and maybe I'm charging less than that guy. And if I was a person who just started, who's trying to go full-time, that's what I would be doing.
I would be going, I'm keeping my prices below these people, and I'm going to shoot 40 weddings.
I'm showing my quality next to these guys. Maybe these guys are better than me. And that's, I think it is really important for the people that are still, trying to make it. It's important for you to do some self-reflection and realize, like, hey, I might not be where those guys are, but my prices reflect that, and I should sell hard. And of course.
Well, and also, like,
you have the advantage of just having a lower price, but also standing by, like, hey, my stuff is really good. It might not be where these guys are, but you don't have to. That doesn't mean you have to give people discounts.
No,
like, don't give people discounts beyond where you currently are, like, because you have
definitely
demand.
Next year is not the time to give discounts.
No.
And you actually need to be. While everyone else is raising their prices, you actually are going to start serving a different client base that they're not able to serve anymore. And you might find yourself in some rooms with some influential people. Because one of the things about us, we have relationships. We have personal relationships with a lot of people who refer us, and other people don't have them.
Yeah.
You know, and so if someone starts taking our weddings, they're going to start getting those relationships, and they're going to get an opportunity. That planner we love might say, like, Jason and Jared are good, but this guy's really good too. And you have that opportunity next year. So the second way, like I said, is raising prices. And a lot of you, that's what you're going to do next year. And that's going to be enough. And I would say for people that are low volume, maybe people who are, especially people who are close to the beginning of their careers, that they didn't have a fully booked season this year. So they're not rescheduling like 40 weddings into next year. I think that's a really good option.
Yep.
If you have like 80% of your supply left over for next year, you know, that's a good option. The third thing I think is it's like, I think the worst option in terms of like life experience, but I think it's actually where most people will find themselves.
It's where you can apply all the yoga that you're doing in 2020, the summer of yoga, or as of 2020 is the summer of chi and meditation and quietness. Next year will not be that year. You can apply all your...
It's a year of hustle.
Yeah.
So I think the third option is you can just do a lot more work.
Yeah.
Like you can try to figure out what the heck to do with these weddings you rescheduled and how to deal with that money getting moved, and then try to just book 20 more weddings next year and figure it out.
Shoot triple headers every single weekend and hopefully retain a little bit of your sanity.
So that's pretty simple math, because it's like, I'm rescheduling 15 weddings and I'm still going to shoot the amount of weddings that I normally do, and that's my goal. How do you accomplish that? I would encourage you, try to get your couples to move to off days. The more of your couples you can get to reschedule to days that are not prime dates in your area, the more prime dates are left open. And you actually might be able to combine this strategy with the second one, which is charging more for those prime dates. And so if you're willing to work super hard, you might come out with 2021 being your best financial year ever, because you're getting second deposits and new bookings for 2022. And you actually could walk away doing really, really well. And that's what I wanted to kind of land on with this, because it's not complicated. I don't need to explain the strategy to someone. What I need to explain to you is, I think it'll be worth it, right? Like, I think if you do this, I just want to encourage you. Like, it's going to be a hard year, but I think you're going to walk away. People who are able to do that you want to talk about flattening the curve? That's flattening the curve for your business. Like, you have level set your business back to where it was at the end of 2019, by the end of 2021. You haven't created any lagging effects of not having the normal amount of weddings you have, any lagging effects of not having the new relationships that you have. Your revenue should be recouped. And so that's like the bitter pill that if you swallow it, it will do the job quickly, and it'll just be brutal, right?
Yeah. And I'll just say, I mean, we've grown our business that way. And as soon as we did it, we were like, we need to find a better way. It's definitely not a long-term fix, a long-term solution, but
it's not a sustainable lifestyle.
It's essentially a stimulus to your business when you're willing to just work your butt off, work till midnight every single day. You know, it's the way that you can make your business definitely more profitable. You know, it might not be profitable for the well-being of your health and family life, but you know, that is an option. If you're single and you're just like, hey, I want to invest in my business, like, next year is going to be the year for you.
Well,
definitely.
There's a whole generation of Depression era people that their dad literally killed himself every day in a factory. And we think we should get to go on 3-month vacations. And so I have a hard time, like, we're in the middle of a crisis moment. If you think you're not going to have to pay a price, you're living in a fantasy.
Yes.
Like, and the price you have to pay is that you get to work a bunch and make a bunch of money, like, it's not so bad.
Yep.
You're getting to make art. You're working with couples. Now, I think there's a hybrid, and we're going to talk about the last one, but kind of as a prelude to that, like, you might have, doing a lot of this work, you might need to kind of compensate for some additional cost to make it a little easier for you. If you never outsourced your editing, if you never hired any help, you didn't do that, maybe you have to. And so let's talk about building teams, because I think that's the fourth one. Some people might only do that a little, and I wouldn't really consider that building teams. But some people, and this is the camp we find ourselves in, are like, next year is the year I build my teams up. I am going to have associates. That's part of my business now. And scaling up is the fourth, I think, way that people are going to not tank their business in 2021. We're going to be scaling up. I think I said it to you like right away. I was like, we have to find a way to scale up next year, because this is going to be, we have to have like, my goal is to be able to do 6 weddings in a day from a team standpoint.
Yeah, we already have 6 weddings booked for a day next year.
Yep. And like, that's going to be, so there's a lot of problems that come with that. Like increased cost, right?
Yep.
Increased management and liability. Everything becomes harder when you're having to deal with. We probably will have some weekends with like 7 or 8 weddings, if you consider the whole week. Like, we'll have 7-day periods with 7 or 8 weddings.
I mean, maybe even more. I mean, we've had 7 or 8 even last year in a single weekend, but I would say even 9-10 weddings on a single weekend next year.
And it's like
gonna be reasonable.
Uploading that footage alone
Takes a day.
Keeping your cards like keeping your batteries charged, keeping your cards, like that kind of thing. Managing it is another thing that comes into that challenge.
If we're giving you anxiety, let's just break it down. So let's pretend you're a business owner and you've been doing things by yourself. You're shooting, you're editing, and maybe you want to grow your team to have an associate shooter who doesn't just second shoot with you on the day of, that goes out and shoots their own wedding. Right.
Yeah, that's probably most people. We're doing this crazy thing. Most people, it's a much simpler.
Let's break it down really easy. Because we started doing teams. We started sending Josh out probably in 2014, 15, maybe. That was the first.
I have zero recollection.
That's when it was.
Such a blur.
Yeah. When we felt confident enough, like Josh had gone out on enough weddings with us, and we were like, he can probably do this himself. He's a really good kid. Maybe he can't do it as well as I could, but with maybe a little bit of training, he totally could. And also, I think this is an aspect of.
And we still edited his work, by the way. So we didn't give it all away right away. We gave a small part away.
Yep. The biggest, I think, hesitation for a lot of creatives is going to be, this second shooter can't do the job that I can do, right? That's the main reason I see, I'd never trust another person to do my work. And the good news is, you don't really have to, I would argue. Like, I'm a great shooter. I'm a very good shooter. If I wanted to, I could go out and I could shoot $10,000 weddings. We've kind of proven it with shooting Huxley films, and like, we could totally do that. What I've had to do myself is, I wouldn't say dumb down the product, but make it much more approachable for a shooter with less experience to shoot the same thing that I could do.
Well, it's more about what is the essence of the product.
Yes.
It's not about what is, like, how do we make it so that the value of it is preserved in the mind of the client, that they're happy with it, that they're still getting something that's artful and quality, but not requiring on the individual perspective of the artist. And I think we value individual perspectives as artists, but you should have to pay a lot more for that. That's our thing. So it's like, if you want an individual perspective, that's going to cost you $10,000.
Yeah.
But if you just want a great wedding film with awesome people, that's also beautiful and managed by artists, it's a different art form. It's just a different thing. Well, we want to make that too.
And I would say a majority of the clients, at least that we work with, maybe this is going into like ideal client world conversation, but our clients that we mainly work with Stop Go Love, they don't want a unique perspective. They do, in that they're like,
they might think they do.
I want my unique perspective to be, my dad and I have a first look before my first look with my husband. That's their idea of a unique perspective. And that to us is just like, dad comes in and gives her a hug. Like, that's not unique. That's like, just like any other wedding day, you just fit a little sliver in of something that a shot that they wanted.
I think like you have to in order to do the teams thing, you have to demystify your art. You have to just accept that it's not, people are special, but what you're doing with a camera is not that unique or special. Every once in a while, you'll see someone like, Alex Douglas, who is like, oh, I was shooting and then he was shooting this typewriter, and then I was thinking I'm going to hire this poem person to read this poem, and then that's going to be the narration. And you're just like, okay, he's on another level.
Yes.
He's thinking about something at another level.
And he's also charging at another level.
Exactly. Like, you might get there, by the way. You might actually someday get there, but you should still make money until you do, right?
Yeah.
And he went to film school, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, so.
Whitney is an art major, by the way, so, you know.
These are not people that are just like, just showing up at weddings like, oh, I just bought this A7 III, can't wait to make $3,000.
Yeah.
We're for that. We're for both people. We're for Alex and Whitney, but we're also for you out there who's just grinding it out, and you have a job. This is your job. And this is my thing about all 4 of these groups. These are human beings. This is their livelihood. Like, they need to make money, right? And so building teams is a great option.
Yep.
It has some challenges. I gave you our challenge, which is like, we have to scale up a lot.
Well,
and then most people, you're giving them a more realistic thing. So let's talk about a normal person.
Sure.
You know, what are the things you would need to do to scale up to, let's just say, 1 associate team?
So shooting 2 weddings
Instead of one
time a weekend.
Yeah, like on a Saturday, instead of 1 weddings, you're doing 2.
Yeah, so immediate kind of needs are going to be, you want that person to do a good job, but then also just practical things that you need is going to be gear, right? So the way that we always, do you want to hop into gear?
Yeah. So for us, discussion? we always buy the gear, but we have a bigger plan. Maybe you rent the gear or whatever, but like, why do we buy gear? We buy gear because we want a little control on the product. And one way to get the control is to make sure that all the gear is the same so that the editors know exactly what they're going to get, so they don't get like weird audio files, and we can train how it's used. And then we can create videos and say, this is how you use this gear. Like, that's our thing.
Yeah. I had probably when we first started having teams, I had one person who runs a competing company in the area shoot for us one time with his gear early on when we were like, okay, we have associate teams.
Yeah, we didn't know what we were doing.
And that was the last time. I was like, I will never let someone else use their own gear ever again. I'll never allow someone to just shoot on a 50 prime ever again all day. Never.
Because that's not what we want to make.
That's not what we make. And just editing a product that looks anything that what we resemble is impossible unless I have full control and just like, hey, these are the shots that I want you to get.
And it doesn't mean, by the way, that person can't make their own product good. It's just not, you need to have some, like, we would just say, try to get some control on the front end on what the approach is going to be on the day of creatively. It doesn't mean they're going to have your eye, but at least they can have your approach. I think that's possible.
So the thing that we've done over the years in buying our gear and just my philosophy on rent or buy is if we are doing less than 10 weddings in a single year, on that new team, then I'm going to rent the gear.
And we think 30 weddings per team.
Yeah. If I have more and I plan to continue to grow my team to be able to shoot 20 to 30 weddings, if I do more than 10, I'm probably going to look at buying because it's something that
more than 10 additional weddings with the associate team. If I'm doing more than 10, that's when I'm starting to look at maybe I just bite the bullet and buy. And the good thing about next year that we already talked about was right now is a great time to increase your prices. If you are already booked for a ton of weddings and you're getting demand and you hate having to be like, man, I'm fully booked on this date, and you've given it away 4 times already. You've sent emails to other videographers, hey, are you available on this date? I'm already booked. I've been booked. It's a reschedule. You know, if you hate doing that and you know you have the demand for it, buy your gear, get a second, team, and you can start making money. And maybe even the first year, by the way, you just break even. That's what I was going to say. It's giving you increased capacity on an ongoing basis. It's a long-term win.
The year after, you're going to see much more profit.
Yep.
So it's a great year to take, maybe it's just a stepping stone year for you. And to becoming a bigger company and a more healthy company.
Let's talk about some practical things about adding team members. First of all, my first advice would be any weddings you are shooting this year, you need to include those team members that you are planning on for next year, even if it costs you a little more to bring them. in terms of like getting them ready about your approach. You need to be a teacher and a trainer. You need to put them around you. You need to show them your approach. If you have a camera that you expect them to use and it isn't their camera, you might want to buy it now.
Yep.
You might want to give them a half season because you don't want them to just start next year when everything gets kicked off again and then they just have the first 5 weddings are terrible.
Mm-hmm.
You want them to learn with training wheels on.
Yep.
Even if they're good, it doesn't mean they're bad. But like they're learning new gear, they're learning a new approach. You want to give them opportunity to fail. It's on you. If you're a leader and you don't give people the opportunity to fail safely, that's bad leadership. And so we don't want to do that. We want to put people. So we're already planning. Like here's the people who might lead shoot next year. We have to, even if we pay them a little extra to shoot this year, we're gonna get them in weddings because we need them next year. They need to be ready. They need to be trained. They need to have on the ground opportunity. That's the first thing. Any weddings you have, pay them to come in second shoot, even if the couple doesn't pay.
Yep.
Even if it comes out of your pocket because it's going to be essential to your ongoing health. I think the other thing is to look at how do you sell that associate package.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a good point.
For us, we built our business around selling associates. We've never promoted Jason Jared.
Yeah.
That was a goal of ours. I think that was a win of ours. I think it worked. I think it works better in video than it does in photo, by the way. It's easier to sell someone on an associate with video because I think it's less artist-driven and more team-driven by its nature. I think most people are not going to be able to do what we do. We just add teams willy-nilly as much as we want, and nobody cares if we have 10 teams, 12 teams, as long as it looks good.
Yeah. I would add on to that point too. Whenever I sell people, I'm always talking to people about, the team. I never am like, when I'm shooting, I do this, this, and this. And that might be an adjustment for you if you're just starting with teams to being like, when we do this, like, I know
using the word we.
Yeah.
The we language.
I know Matt Celeste with Blue Flash down in Providence, Rhode Island. He just assumes like he's not even going to shoot. Like he just is like, I'm not the person who's not gonna be there, or I'm the person who will not be there. It'll be someone day of. It's not me. He doesn't even want people to know that he owns the business when he's talking to them. He's just like, yeah, I just do the admin stuff.
and he runs a large volume.
Yes.
Most of you, it's gonna probably more be like this. We talked to Mark Spooner about it, right? Mm-hmm. It's gonna be more like they call up John Smith Photography.
Yep.
Or Joanne Smith. And they say, hi, I want to buy your photos. I like your photos. And this person says, I'm booked on that date. Right? That's going to be like, oh, and that's going to be devastating to this person.
Yeah.
And then you're going to say, oh, you can't have me, but do you want this random guy that I also know that isn't me?
Yeah.
And I've already heard this from people. Like, people are not psyched on associate packages.
Yeah. You should change your name. Not the name of your business. You should change your actual name to like Joe. So you're like, hey, I'm Joe with Mark Spooner Photography, and I run things here. And here's, some of the people I'm available on the day, but also my, one of our other photographers is.
It gets easier
also,
over time.
I will also say this, and I think this is a big deal, is stop calling people associates. Like an associate is someone who's just the helper, right? Yep. No one wants the help. So people want named people. So, hey, I'm not free, but Caleb is free. Do that all the time. Our lead shooting team.
Here's some work he's done.
What I do is I go, our lead shooters are Caleb, Dom, Nick, Josh, Jason, Jared. I put me and you at the end. I'm like, we're backup, bro. Like, here's our lead shooting team, and I lead with the guys. So I'm like, these are the people who are going to be on the ground, and I don't even want them to think about me on the phone with them as being potentially.
What about the people who have no body of work of those associates?
I would say you gotta get them out there. Like, even if they're a second shooter, then you actually can say, here's some of their work.
That's what I think is really important about it, is like telling a person, like, first of all, speaking in terms of your studio, I think studio is better than associates.
Yes.
And I think saying our studio and our team.
I say we're team based. We're team based operation. We have Kyle who edits. We have our lead shooting team. That's like the first thing
you say to someone on the phone. And then I think having evidence of their proficiency right away on the tip of your tongue, on the tip of your fingers for clicking and sending.
Yep.
is important too. Even if it's work they did for themselves. That wasn't you, and getting permission from them and saying, hey, if anyone calls me, can I use some of your own work to send it to them and sell you? I think like you have to know that conversation I had already kind of walked through, that is going to be the conversation you have if you don't start the conversation differently from now on.
Yeah. And you might even have to re-edit a wedding that they've done. If they've done work in the past, you might have to re-edit to be like, here's some of their work, essentially with the style of editing that we do. Maybe it's a little bit better. But I don't know. Like there's a bunch of different ways.
You have to make it cohesive or not. You have to I don't know.
Yeah.
What I do know is that conversation is going to always be disappointing. If you don't start it with we, team, that client's going to be like, I'm getting ripped off here. I do think though, and this is what I say, if you're like an artist with a big name, you've already been doing this a long time, selling associates, one of the ways to do it is to sell it for a lower price.
Yeah.
And I think for some of you, you're going to raise your personal prices next year and you're going to decrease. And so one way to show the value of you and also still make revenue is raise your own prices and create a new package at your old prices.
Yeah, that's what Mark Spooner told us he was kind of doing, right?
Yes.
Is his philosophy is just, hey, my time is more valuable now. And if you want to pay a premium, you get me. And if you want to pay our old prices, what your friend got 3 years ago, then you
Here's
pay
an associate. But then you're showing value to that person. You're saying, I'm still flexible and I'm still available.
And this person is as good as I, was or am like a year ago.
You might even say like, I'll edit them still, or like, I don't know what your clients are going to want or need, but like being creative about this, either like you're adjusting your branding so that it already communicates this is a team-based thing, adjusting your communication on the very front end on your website, on your emails, that it communicates this is team-based, especially if you're planning on charging the same for everyone. That person needs to know. Humanizing your team, not making them seem ghetto, like where you're like, oh yeah, this guy, I'll hire one of my associates. Like that is not a trust building thing. It's exactly what Jared said. It's like, yeah, I'm going to send Caleb. We humanize Caleb right away. And then they humanize them. Oh, I like Caleb. Caleb's awesome. And then I think the other one is
people like Caleb and Dom more than they like me.
Definitely.
After everything is done.
Yeah.
And so just, I don't know. It's kind of it's honest for us because I'm just like, they do it. They're the ones. They like, I push them and I'm.
But we have we have a really long amount of time doing it, so it's easier for us.
Yeah. The other thing that I think when we kind of build in this natural progression, because we have to do this too. Like we go from, someone being a second shooter to being a lead shooter. So when someone hasn't led a team before, how do I sell them to a couple? I'm like, hey, Richie's going to be your lead shooter. Oh, can I see some of Richie's work? He hasn't led a team. What we usually do, because Richie has been a second shooter for so many weddings, or by that time, we're like, yeah, here's some of his work.
Yeah, we do a Richie cut.
I don't have to say like, oh yeah, this is a wedding that Richie has led, or but I have just an automatic, here's some of Richie's work. His shots are essentially 50% of what's in the video. And so it's an honest way to just.
And also, we say Richie's been at 40 weddings.
Yeah.
Like we get our team as much work as possible. That's like I think an advanced tip. It's not going to help you in 2021 because you probably won't have the opportunity.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like for 2021 to not tank your business, you might need to grow teams, and for a lot of you, you're going to need to change your language so that it's team-based, change your communication on your website, all that stuff. You're going to need to humanize that team really quick, find work that they did, have it right on the tip of your finger. If someone says, can I see what they did? And you say, let me go try to find it. That's bad.
Yeah.
You need to just have it. And then I think the last thing is you might need to come up with a hybrid solution, which is raising prices and having a associate package, which a studio package, where they're getting a different associate, maybe even redefining the brand a little.
I would say another thing to even add to that list too is it has to do with training. In your brain, coming up with a curriculum of the things that are important to you, the things that you currently do to make your brand, right? And a product that is from you, that can be passed on to a second person. So if you're like, hey, for instance, something that we do at Stop Go Love every single time, regardless of the wedding, is we want to be there an hour early. Why? For multiple reasons. It's just it's a thing that we've just grafted into our company every single time, because we want to be there an hour before the photographer to be able to shoot the details, the rings, all that stuff. We want our own space to be able to capture that. We want to shoot B-roll of the location if it's Witchmere Beach Club, and we want to shoot, the beach, and we make a joke because we always shoot the American flag that's there for every wedding.
You need to.
Get B-roll, get the detail shots. We want all that stuff to be done. So by the time the photographer shows up, we're like, hey, we've hung the dress for you. We've done this, and this for you.
We're not going to be in your way.
We're not going to be in your way. I've set it up. Here you are. And the first impression of Stop Go Love from the photographer is, these guys are awesome. I love them. They said hi. They were nice. They set everything up for me.
And we were totally
and they're not
present.
in my way.
We're totally present with that photographer.
Yep.
We're not distracted.
Yep. And so that's a brand thing for us that we do every single time, that they can know, hey, we're not going to be in the way. We're thinking about you. What are the things that are important to you and your company? Those are some things that you have to just make happen.
A brand is more than the shooting.
Mm-hmm.
A brand is about your values,
but also it's about shooting too. So that should be in your curriculum as well. You should think of your brand as, how do I teach this to somebody else? Mm-hmm. These are some things. We're coming up with one right now for ourselves that we can just play a video, share with everyone. They can go back to it. This is a big curriculum that we're filming. You probably don't have to do that. If you're, going to your first, shooter, he's probably going to be someone who's your, right-hand man. You probably don't have to do that, but start thinking about your product. Like if you're going to sell a curriculum, I think that's going to be a big win, because then once you can train it to 2 people, then you can train it to 3 people, train it to 4 people. And it's downhill from there.
Yeah. It's scalable. And that's what we want. We want scalable businesses that are sustainable and profitable. And so hopefully this was helpful today. Like I said, there's really 4 things you can do. You can just work another job and let's see what happens. You can raise your prices, and just, kind of compensate that way. You can just kill yourself and work twice as many weddings. Maybe you won't kill yourself. Maybe you'll love it and have a great time. But you can work really, really hard next year and just try to recoup it that way. Or you can start working on your teams, adding teams, increasing your supply. So that way when the demand rush happens. And by the way, we didn't even mention this. There could be a pent-up demand next year. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity for people to make a lot of extra money, possibly.
Yeah.
So if you can figure out a way to increase your supply, you might reap the benefits.
Every single venue that I've talked to and seen is already booked. It is end of June next year. People are getting married on Thursday. They're getting married on Tuesday already. So next year, if you want to start a wedding venue, it's the perfect year to start a wedding venue, because you will be fully booked next year.
Yes. So. And, there's going to be increased demand for the next 2 years, I think, because people who are like, oh, I want to get married at this venue. Oh, I can't. They'll just push it to 2022.
Yep.
And you can get, you having teams, you having more capacity is just going to give you more opportunities, because this is going to keep happening. So we're always pro team. It's not for everyone. It's not for every single thing, but it's a great solution for many people. And guess what? Clients love it. Mm-hmm. Clients don't care about you that much. They just care about themselves. They want to see good videos. They just want to see good photos. They don't want to necessarily be your best friend. So if you send an associate and you've made it clear that they're not receiving less by sending that associate, like that they're getting what you normally would do, like, well, this is what all our stuff is. Oh, you liked it? Oh, that's never me. That's always everyone. That's always us. It's just the brand name.
Great advice, Jay.
They're not going to be like, oh, this is stupid. They're going to be like, oh, okay. And so, I think next year you can start establishing that. It's a great opportunity. There's a lot of things in the middle of this that I think a lot of people are going to do that are going to set them up for long-term success. And so that's what I would encourage you to do. Don't take a loss next year. Make it a win in some way. Either make more money, set yourself up for the future, but I think you have an opportunity.
I'm with you, man. All of that.
All of that.
Good.
So if you liked this, give us 5 stars. If you're listening on a podcast platform, go ahead and subscribe it. Hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. And of course, the alert bell. There's a lot of other content too if you are a filmmaker that has to do with like video stuff, like cameras and things that we're into. So definitely check that out as well, and have an awesome day. Thanks for checking out the Wedding Pros podcast.